In this video we'll look at a report of a German armored train in 1943 that was later captured by the Americans. First off, some basic information about the train. It was called Panzerzug 65, Armored Train 65. It was commissioned in November 1942 and was operational in July 1943 and served until the end of the war. It was a standardized armored train of the BP-42 series, whereas BP stands for Behelfsmäßiger Panzerzug, which ironically means makeshift armored train. The maximum armor thickness was 30 mm, which meant that they were protected against small arms fire. The maximum speed was 60 km per hour, which is about 37 miles per hour, with a range of 180 km, which is about 112 miles. These armored trains were mirrored to drive in both directions without problems. As such, each car was available twice. It consisted of 2 howitzer cars with captured 100mm guns, 2 command cars, 2 AA and gun cars with 20mm guns and captured 76.2mm guns, 2 tank carrier cars with Panzer 38Ts, and 2 push-off cars in the front. Note that the Panzerzug 65 in December 1943 differs from this setup, since we know from the report that Panhard recon cars were also used. Originally the train was intended to be used in Greece, but on its way there it was noted that it was too heavy for the bridge and rail system. As such, it was returned to Croatia. Keep in mind that armored trains were mostly used in areas with low force strength or against partisans. After the war, Panzerzug 65 surrendered to US forces at Holthusen, Mecklenburg, with 3 other armored trains. According to Sawodny, the Americans had little interest in it and likely demilitarized or scrapped the rolling stock. Although this was an exception, the majority of armored trains was taken by the Soviet Union. This video was made possible by my Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Sadly, due to major changes over the last months, I've become far more dependent on your support than ever before. You guys are keeping the channels going. If you like what I do and want me to continue doing it here on YouTube, thank you for considering supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar. Links are in the description. Yet let's move on to the report. The report is dated 4th January 1944 and is about the operations in December 1943. It is addressed to the commander of the armored trains and the chief of the general staff of the German army. The report is classified as Geheim, secret. The report notes that the train was still subordinated under the Train Security Section A, Agram. Note, Agram is the German name for Zagreb. While the train station was stationed in Popovača, that is located southeast of Zagreb. Popovača is a small town which has about 10,000 inhabitants nowadays. In 1931 it was around 13,000. The train was located there earlier, and the report notes that this relocation was a success, since there were only a few wrong alarms or late alarms. Additionally, long arrival times were eliminated. The report continues. Although the situation along the route was very critical and very heavy destruction took place, Panzerzug 65 believes that major destruction, especially attacks on bases, was avoided because the armored train was in the middle of the endangered area. One key mission of armored trains was to defend railway lines and bring a lot of firepower with armor protection to endangered areas. It is also noted that the loss of the town Kazma, located east of Zagreb earlier, had a negative effect on the morale of the Croatian troops, and as such further measures were taken. In the Croatian garrison of Popovača site, for example, 17 arrests of soldiers were made. Through various consultations with the commander of the Croatian Mountaineer Brigade, it was possible to ensure that at least the most incompetent officers were relieved and unreliable troops were transferred. The loss of Kazma was against Yugoslav partisans, and here we must look at the bigger picture. On 8th September 1943, the armistice of Kazabili was announced. This armistice was between Italy and the Allies. As a result, the Germans lost about 300,000 Italian troops in Croatia and Montenegro for occupational duties. Additionally, Yugoslav partisans could capture a large amount of weapons and ammo that basically made them self-sufficient. Later in September, the British took the airport in Foggia that ended German air superiority over the area as well. As such, Germany was more reliant than before on the independent state of Croatia to secure the region. In spite of the name, the Croatian state was an Axis and later solely German puppet. Yet back to the report. It details the damages caused by enemy attacks. The assigned route was destroyed twice in several places. The reconstruction took 3 and 7 days, respectively. A bridge that was unguarded was blown up 3/4 hours after the armored train had passed it, but was passable again after 2 days. Several trains ran on mines. An attack on a bridge defense was attempted but repulsed. Allegedly, an ammunition depot 15 km east of Zagreb and an airfield 10 km south of Zagreb and 2 ammunition depots in Zagreb itself were captured and destroyed. Precise documentation is missing here, as despite repeated requests, there has still been no notification of the situation. This information requires some further contextualization. Generally, armored trains were also equipped with train tracks and tools to fix and maintain the railway lines and also fix damages. This was also part of the mission profiles. The information that several trains drove on mines refers to other trains. The next part deals with how the armored train was called into action. 2 different approaches are mentioned. First, regular scheduled security missions were conducted after a proposal was given via radio with time and location. Second, ad hoc missions were conducted in reaction to either alarms that were received via rail telephone network or due to observations like sounds of combat and/or detonations. In total, 21 security missions were conducted. These took usually 4 to 7 hours. Meanwhile, ad hoc missions due to alarms happened 11 times. In 3 of these cases, major damage to the railways could be prevented that had just been started. Additionally, there were 2 operations near the railway tracks where the armored train provided overwatch. In one of these operations, the artillery of the train provided supporting fire on a village that was occupied by partisans. In total, 3,553 kilometers were traveled, that is about 2,208 miles. The report continues. The armored train repaired 4 blast sites, pulled 2 blown-up passenger trains back to the next station, preventing the looting of a passenger train that was already been ambushed. On December 9th and 21st, the armored train derailed with 2 of the 3 additional protection carriages. There was no damage to the armored train itself. Once, on the 28th December, the armored train drove onto a mine that detonated under the protection carriage. The snowplow of the higher construction material car 1A was damaged. Each time, the armored train was able to get back on track on its own and repair the track in a makeshift manner. About the protection carriages, these were already used in World War I. Basically, protection carriages were freight cars in the front and back of the train to trigger mines. They could carry nothing or railway tracks or similar cargo that was not easily damaged. Additionally, the armored trains generally carried spare tracks and tools to repair tracks, if necessary. The report also gives some insights on infantry and armored vehicle operations. Once the armored train was shot at with a few rifle shots during the journey, but after several bursts of machine gun fire there was calm. The infantry platoon disembarked 5 times and took up ambush positions, but without coming into contact with the enemy. 6 times the infantry platoon and the armored vehicles took action, sometimes together with the Ustasha, which was an ultranationalist organization, and the Domobrans, the regular Croatian army. Hostages and partisan liaisons were arrested. The Panhard, a French armored car on rails, made 3 trips. On 28th December, 2 Panhard cars coupled together with a push-up wagon traveled the route for the first time. Sadly, I don't know the composition of the infantry platoon. Generally, a regular German infantry platoon had an authorized strength of about 50 riflemen in 1941. Later in the war, namely in fall 1943, it was reduced to 31 men. A pre-war heavy machine gun platoon for a German armored train had an authorized strength of 56 men. Note that the Panhards were captured French armor cars that were equipped with wheels to drive on rail tracks. This is in line with armored trains used during Operation Barbarossa in 1941. Here, trains were equipped with French S-35 tanks, although these were carried on flatbed carriages and could dismount from the train. They were not used on railway tracks, so equipment that was outdated for regular front lines often saw action with armored trains, where their limited combat effectiveness was higher than on the regular front lines. The next part is about losses. In parentheses it's noted wounds, illness, and death. In this case, there were no deaths. The first was illness. An enlisted man, namely a tank driver, he had balanitis, which is an inflammation of the glans penis. He was transferred to a field hospital. The second was a combat injury. An enlisted man with the function of a cobbler was injured on the back of his head This happened during an attack by partisans on a passenger train. He was hit with a rifle butt. He was transferred to a field hospital as well. The third was an NCO of the anti-aircraft gun. He broke his ankle and was transferred into the reserve field hospital in Warsaw. Since the injury will likely take more than 4 weeks, he was transferred to the replacement battalion. Interesting here is that the exact field hospital with number and location is noted, since it was not the one that the armored train was assigned to. Additionally, it is not noted how the injury occurred, probably because it was not combat related, but that is just a guess. There were also various other entries. About rations, it is noted that the situation improved significantly compared to the previous months, particularly that the food is more varied. This was achieved by replacing the cook. It is noted that there were no medals awarded. About training, it is stated that little training was possible due to the many operations conducted, yet the firing training was intensified. Additionally, 4 men visited a training of the armored branch from August to December. Also, 2 soldiers were punished. The first was Obergefreiter Rauber. He received a strong reprimand since he used a special train against orders. The second one was Feldwebel Brinkmann. He received 6 days of strong house arrest for 3 offenses. First, he used up emergency stock of fuel without reporting it. Second, he dealt carelessly with his refueling log. Third, on 22nd December 1943, he was assigned to a tank driving duty but was drunk. Finally, it is noted that the authorized strength is 99 enlisted men, but only 92 are available. Specifically, it is noted that 1 heavy mortar cannoneer, 3 light machine gun riflemen, 2 anti-aircraft gunners, and 1 gunner are missing. To summarize, this report seems to be very much in line with the regular missions and operations of armored trains in a defensive way, as discussed in my video on why or when armored trains were generally used. In short, armored trains are a simple instrument to protect railway lines in areas with limited infrastructure, low population, and low overall force density, something that is usually the case with dealing with partisans. Thank you to Andrew and my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.